Okay, so obviously you clicked this video because you want to learn how to color grade in DaVinci, and maybe you're like a Premiere user like myself who is slowly either learning or transitioning into using DaVinci as your full editor. That being said, I know how difficult it is and was for me to transition from Premiere to DaVinci in regards to color grading at least, and you might be confused or lost on how to transition from one to the other. One disclaimer, I am somewhat new to DaVinci Resolve, however I'm not new to color grading. I'm not a professional colorist, however, I have a lot of experience with it, especially in Premiere Pro. That being said, we're gonna hop into the video right now. On the screen here, you can see that I have DaVinci Resolve pulled up. You can see here, imagine that you're down here in your edit panel. You have, some footage here, you have some audio layers there, whatever. You're gonna hop over to color, so just simply go over here to color. And then you'll have your clips that you have in your timeline here, and if you don't see your timeline and you want to, you can go up here and click timeline, it'll bring it up. I don't really like it being there, so I turned that off for the time being, and I just have my actual footage here. Now, over here, you'll see a different looking window, which is called the node editor. And this is a way of editing color or anything really effects wise in DaVinci that you don't have in Premiere. However, it's really not a difficult thing to understand. In fact, I think it's a little bit easier after you understand how they work. Now, imagine you have no node here, right? This is called a node. I'm gonna delete that. And you just have one point to another point. You can either right click, add node, and add a corrector node, right? And then you can drag that point in there and drag that into there. And it basically works like layers, one being the top layer. And then as you continue to add more nodes, they go lower below that one. So this one will affect the rest of them. But if you don't want to right click every time and add a node, you can just add a corrector node simply by pressing Option S or Alt S on your keyboard. I'm gonna go ahead and add 7 of them. You're not gonna need to add 7 of them to get a simple color grade. I do this out of preference because I have a certain workflow that I like, along with some other stuff we'll talk about later to spice up the video if you would. You might only need 3 or maybe 4. So let's go ahead and label them just so we're aware of what everything is. On number 1 here, I want to right click it, add a node label. I'm going to call this white balance or WB. The next one is going to be pre-log, log, post-log. And then I'm going to do chromatic aberration, zoom blur, and then finally we're going to end some film grain, and I'll teach you how to add all these things later. We're going to start at number 3, which is our log. Now, if you're not shooting log footage, you don't need to do this part. But assuming that you want to color grade, you understand what log footage is. And if you don't, you can watch some other videos on the channel like here, and I'll teach you about it in that video. But I'm going to assume that you have some log footage, whether it's Sony or Canon or whatever else, and you're wanting to apply a conversion LUT to it and color grade that log to a Rec. 709 profile. That's what we're about to do. So under log, you have 2 options. At least I know of 2 options, and those are the 2 options I use depending on what I'm working with. Under log here, I'm gonna right click this, and I can go to LUT, and then I can find a conversion LUT that is built into the software, which is something I think that DaVinci has needed for a while, and they have a similar feature, but it's not quite the same. I'm gonna go Canon log to Rec. 709. You can click that. You can see that it has applied a look to my footage here. However, it's a little low contrast. Maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I have different footage and it didn't look good for some reason. I'm going to Command Z to undo that. And over here in my library, I'm going to scroll down till I see color space transform. You can also alternatively search it here. But color space transform, I'm going to click and drag onto my log layer, my log node. Over here in input color space, I want to choose whatever input color space this was. I shot this in Canon Cinema Gamut, so I'm gonna click that. Under input gamma, I know that I shot in C-Log3, so Canon log 3. You can see that that doesn't look great, but we're gonna fix it. Output color space, I'm gonna go scroll down here, and I'm gonna choose Rec.2020. That's what I actually am working with here, that's what I want. You might wanna choose Rec. 709, but I find that this looks better for my Canon log footage itself. So click that, and then under timeline, output gamma, I'm gonna choose Rec. 709 now, and there we are. Now, you might think, okay, maybe there's not a big difference, but if you wanna check the difference, you can come over here and turn off this bypass, and you can see before and after. However, we're not done here. This is obviously just a conversion. There's a lot more work to be done. Let's start back at white balance now that we've converted our footage, and I want to just pick my white balance out of here. Luckily, I have something white, which is this wall that I'm going to use as a reference. Come down here under primaries, color wheels, click on this little tool right here, click and drag, and you'll choose, a point on the wall, obviously in my case. We'll click back here. That's a little bit too green, but we're gonna fix that. So now we obviously have the white balance adjusted and we have the log converted. Now we want to go to pre-log here, and I'm going to add an S-curve just slightly. Drag this down, drag this up, and maybe I'll mess with my midtones until they look okay. And I think I'm happy with that for the moment being. And now you can say, okay, it's not looking bad, we're getting there. But what about all these tools down here? What do they do? Well, obviously you can see your temperature for your white balance here, temp, tint, contrast, pivot, all these things down here. What I want to focus on is understanding lift, gamma, gain, and offset for you guys. Lift is where you can change the dark parts of your footage. Gamma is where you're going to change your midtones. Gain is where you're going to change the wider highlight points, if you would. They're not highlights, but the brighter sections. And then offset will control the entire image. So if you look at lift real quick, we'll go down to this wheel down here. These are all technically scroll wheels. You can watch the dark parts of my image change as I bring it left to go down, it gets darker. And then right will bring the dark sections higher, which would make it brighter. Again, these can be way overexposed or way underexposed. That looks bad. This looks bad. So obviously we want to find a sweet spot. I think that negative 0.01 looks okay. Now gamma, again, that's our mid-range. So we're going to bring this down a little bit too. I kind of like the darker shadows, darker areas of this footage looking that way. Gain, I'm gonna bring up a little bit because again, I do wanna have some bright sunniness to it because this was a nice sunny area. And then offset, again, that's the entirety of the footage. I'm gonna just bump this down a tiny bit. Now, those four, can be changed by the color. I'm not gonna do that on this, node. I'm gonna go to post log. And now if I need to, I can go ahead and change things again. I don't like how green my midtones are. So again, I'm going to bring the midtones, which again is underneath gamma here, and I'm going to shift it slightly towards the yellow red region, if you would, just a little bit. I like that more. It fits more for the scene. Now you might have a different preference. That's totally cool. You can do so. Nonetheless, here we are. This is what I think looks good for this shot. Obviously here we're good. Let's say we want to do still a little bit more work here. I'm not going to dive into everything because there's so much to do. I just want to get you up and running so you can at least change a little bit about your work and color it accordingly. Now, I still think that this has a weird look to it. It's not quite where I want it. So I'm going to take the offset, which again controls the entirety of the image, and I'm going to bring this closer to the yellows because I like the really sunny feeling, look. And now I see that, okay, the highlights are a little blown. I don't like that. So I'm going to go back to pre-log. I'm going to take my highlights here, and I'm gonna chop them down just a tiny bit. I can also, mess with it here and there. Bring those down just a little bit, and that's a bit more fitting for what I want. I'm also gonna bring my shadows up down a little bit, and my midtones up a little bit. And I'm happy with what we have here. I like the way this looks. You might, again, have a different opinion, but that's kind of the subjective side of color grading. I'm happy with this look, so I'm just gonna run with this. I like this. But the thing is, it's a little boring to me still. It could use some life, so I wanna go ahead and add some visual effects to spice up this footage. Now, you can go ahead and use DaVinci's built-in plugins and effects, to get a certain look, whether it's the halation, or film grain you wanna add to it, whatever. You can go ahead and do that. In my case, Motion Array has been a partner of the channel for a few months now, and in those few months, I've been using their assets, which I think are phenomenally good, not to mention speed up the workflow and are very user-friendly. And if you don't know what Motion Array is an online library full of plugins and stock footage, stock video, photos, music. They also have presets that work in both DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro and Sony Vegas and loads of other softwares like After Effects that you can go ahead and just drag and drop these built-in presets that you would otherwise have had to made from scratch to change and add things to your footage. Now, if you want to follow along with this part of the video with the Motion Array assets, you can, and if you want to do so, you can go ahead and click the top link in the description. That'll get you $50 off of an annual plan should you go through the link. And if you don't, you can still follow along by just filling in the blanks with, the equivalent functions and effects that DaVinci has built in already. But we're gonna go through obviously the Motion Array ones because those are the ones that I do actually use in my real workflow. So I have under here, again, chromatic aberration, right? This is going to obviously add chromatic aberration, but nothing's applied here yet because we just don't have, a simple drag and drop chromatic aberration effect. Now, since I have the Motion Array app installed under library here next to our nodes panel, I can go ahead and type in what I'm looking for. In my case, I wanna add chromatic aberration, like I said, so chromatic aberration, right, chrome. Here we are. Drag and drop this onto this node specifically. And you'll notice immediately, if I click and drag in here, chromatic aberration has been applied. If I undo that, right, you'll see what it looks like before and then after. And it's a nice look. You can leave it as it is, or you can modify it, which is something we're gonna do right now. I wanna modify this to, play with the preset and find a preset that works for me. I'm gonna choose retro lens, which is what I do for every video. Go ahead and click use lens. And then the lens radius, I'm gonna change from 200 because look how intense this is. This is not a very great look. At least in my opinion, it's not the look I'm going for. So I'm going to increase this until it's just so subtle enough that it adds some flare, but it doesn't take over the whole image. I think like around 900, 800-ish is roughly where I'm gonna stick. And I use this effect specifically because I like the retro-y kind of lens look that kind of looks imperfect. That's why I go ahead and apply this. But let's step this up a notch to add that vintage retro look to the lens and add some zoom blur, because I think the edges of retro vintage lenses have that like lack of focus, kind of blurred, rough looking edges. And I'm going to apply the same thing here. Now, again, if you want to go ahead and do this yourself, you can find, like if you just type in blur, I'm sure you can find a zoom blur built in. But I think that the motion array zoom blur is a little bit better looking, so I'm gonna click and drag and drop that onto here. You'll notice that it automatically has changed the blur amount here. It's brought it from this to that. It's a bit much again to me. I like a subtle look. So let's go and click preset, go to subtle, and that is generally more fitting for me. I can turn this off to see what it looks like before and after. And let's bring that quality down to about there and the strength down to about 0.9. Looks good to me. Again, this is before and after. There we go. And one more thing to do, you can go ahead and add this in multiple ways. You can just type in grain. There's obviously a film grain texture that you can add here, but I'm gonna go ahead again and use the motion array film grain asset, click and drag it onto this node here. So click that node, click and drag it on there. Now I have the film grain from motion array here. I'm gonna go ahead and choose which film size I want. Again, I want 35 in this case. You might want 8 or 16 if you're going for a Super 8 look or whatever. And that is my look. Now, one more thing I like to add, which is probably what a lot of you like to add, and instead of using any motion array asset, I'm going to use something that's built into DaVinci because I like it, and that would be halation. So click and drag halation onto your shot here, and you can automatically tell it's already applied some, overall glowing halated areas to the shot. It might be a bit much for you, so again, you can play with your effects here, threshold. If you want to see the isolated regions, you can click that, and you can change the threshold again so you can see what it's actually affecting. And you can change a lot more effects here, but I'm gonna leave it at that. And let's just name this halation. And that is my workflow. So originally we had this, and now we have this, which I think it looks a heck of a lot better. Now again, you don't have to do all these things. You can just stop at the basic color grade after you convert to log and maybe add some saturation or contrast. But I like to do this because I think it gives it some character. Now, I really like the look we have, but let's say I don't want to redo all of that work to apply to a shot that the effect will look really good on as well. Let's just assume that this color grade we have is going to apply nicely to this clip, which is also shot in log, the same profile from the same camera, so it should, at least convert okay. And let's just assume that it's going to go on there perfectly, right? What can we do? We can click on this one, and we can come over here and hover over it, and if you have a mouse, middle click the mouse wheel, and it will apply all of what we just applied to this shot. And if you don't have that, again, you can just come over here, you can copy and paste the attributes onto this one and do the same thing. And that's generally, at least my workflow, my structure from going from Premiere to DaVinci. Now, obviously this wasn't a tutorial on like, hey, here's how you do this in Premiere, and here's how you do the same thing in DaVinci. This was just to help you to understand that being an avid Premiere Pro user, it's not hard to transition into at least the color grading portion of DaVinci if you understand just what the tools do. So I hope this video helped you guys. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you apply any of these effects or tools or tips to your videos, because again, I've seen a lot of videos out there on how to do this in DaVinci that never really quite explained what they're doing. They just show you what they're doing, and then if you copy it, it can work, but you don't understand the concepts. And that's something that I figured I would go ahead and help fix. So I hope you guys actually got something out of this. I hope it helped you for your future in creating videos. And if you have a good video that you like and you want to share it, tag me in it, mention me in the description. I'll check it out and watch it, leave a comment. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Again, if you want to get Motion Array and you want to get $50 off, press the top link in the description. It will also be the pinned comment. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. See you soon. We got new lights, like I mentioned in the last video. We have another light here. Got new stuff to talk about, new things to go on about. So with that in mind, I will see you guys soon. All right, peace out.